Welcome. My name is Catherine Rucker, spiritual minister. I'm a neighbor and I'm very honored to be a friend of Marianne Detzler's. She's remarkable. I want to take this quick opportunity to remind us to turn off our cell phones, please. It's so easy to forget. Part of this celebration today will be recorded. We're gathered here today to honor the memory of Robert Detzler and to celebrate his life. We're here to support his family and fellow students. Thank you all for coming. We're here to affirm our faith in life eternal as we bless this loved one on his way into his next experience in living. From this time forward, may we never think of him as limited by time or form, but always as a living soul, continuing on the pathway of eternal life, ever in Spirit's wise and loving care. We open our hearts now for your divine healing love. We affirm your guidance and daily support in all of our lives. For this, we do give thanks. Amen. If you'll all please stand for a brief hymn. You'll find it on your program. How Great Thou Art. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd like to take a moment now to read it. It's entitled, There Is No Death. I am standing on the seashore. A ship at my side spreads his white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. It is an object of beauty and strength, and I stand and watch it until at length it is a speck. White cloud just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, he's gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. He is just as large in mast and hull and spar as he was when he left my side, and he is just as able to bear his load of living weight to his destined harbor. His diminished size is in me, not in him. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, there, he's gone, there are other eyes watching him coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, there he comes. That is dying. At this point, we're going to hear Remembrances by Reverend Marianne Detzler and Catherine Hamilton Cook.
At this time, I want to thank everybody who's come today and say thank you for being here. Thank you for adding your healing energies. Is this sound okay? Okay, all right. I'm a little shorter than everybody else. I'm closer to the mic. I especially want to thank the Hungarian SRT students who set aside a day of prayer and met together on April the 12th. And I want to also thank all of those teachers out there and here who notified their students of making this week a time of prayer, not only for Robert and myself, but for all the SRA community, so that we may do the sense of healing that we need to do, and so that we come together to move forward in a successful way for the future. Thank you for being part of the spiritual energy that is moving forward. Okay, about Robert. He was born July 4th, 1926, in Prescott, Michigan. This is just on the edge of Flint. His parents were Chester Detzler and Lavinia Sawyer. His father died when he was 2 years old, leaving the family of 5 children: Faye, Irene, and Gladys, his older sisters, all of whom are now deceased. His younger brother, Donald, of Scottsdale, Arizona, still survives. When Faye died at age 14, this greatly affected Robert, because he was assigned to stay home that day and take care of her. She was gravely ill from several things, and they did not have money for the hospital. He always felt responsible for not taking good enough care of her. Well, we can see how that responsibility in healing has carried over, can't we? To all his students who called him one time or another, he was very meticulous and insisted on working and working and working until he got it right. He was very responsible with his healing work. And we all know he really wasn't responsible, but that's how we are when we're young children, right? We take on the heavy load. His mother provided for the young family by cleaning and washing clothes and ironing and crocheting and any odd jobs available to her. And Robert added to the family support by digging gardens, hauling water, delivering newspapers, and the other children did whatever they could as well. So it was a very poor existence. However, Robert said they never really felt poor because they always had something to eat and something to do. The welfare agency provided food help and some clothing. However, Robert got tired of eating cornmeal whatever 3 times a day. The first time I ever made a meal for Robert, guess what I fixed? So we're sitting there eating, and I say to Robert, "Are there any foods that you don't like?" He kind of looked strange, finished chewing his mouthful, and said, "Cornbread." And I said, "Oh." And he said, "But I like your cornbread. It tastes different." Well, that was in my very purest health food days, and I had put rye flour and honey in my cornbread, so of course it didn't quite taste like what he remembered. And over the years, he ate many, many batches of my cornbread because I had many, many recipes and often added jalapenos because he liked that in his cornbread. And you all know how much he enjoyed Mexican food and that trip to Taco Bell. And many of you rode his car on the Taco Bell Express. Yeah. Back to his youth. His family attended religious services at nearby locations they could walk to, the Methodist Church and the Salvation Army. Christmas gifts were often only those that the Salvation Army charity provided. The children still had fun making kites from neighbors' newspapers and saving their pennies for the string that was needed. Robert remembered one Christmas in particular, where in the box from the Salvation Army was a cardboard cowboy hat. And he instantly became the cowboy of all time. His mom found some scrap of cloth and made him a vest to match, and he was so happy. He said that Christmas was the happiest he ever remembered of his childhood. And all his life, he loved Westerns and novels about cowboys in the West. A picture of John Wayne hangs on Robert's office wall alongside a painting of Jesus. And another painting of a depiction of Adam and Eve in love sitting on a swing in the Garden of Eden. Someone recently came to our house and saw that picture. Isn't that a picture of Jesus over there? And isn't that John Wayne? I says, yep, my husband was a balanced man. He lived in both worlds. Yeah, he definitely was living in both worlds. One summer, he grew 6 inches. And he had to miss school that year because he was in his early teens, and literally his knees grew apart. And so he was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And they put pins in his knees, and he had to learn to walk all over again. This must have been very hard for him, as he's always been extremely active. I know spending a month in the wheelchair up and down he was not that happy about it. And patience has been a hard lesson for Robert, as you all know. He was drafted into the U.S. Navy before he finished high school because of that, and he served from 1944 to 46, despite having chronic seasickness and labeled unfit for sea duty. Now, isn't that the Navy for you? Well, we know that mal de mer never stopped Robert from deep-sea fishing either. He went. If he wanted to do something, he did it. So he finished high school at age 20 after the Navy and enrolled in college to study electrical engineering, but he did not graduate from college then. Later on, he graduated from college the same year that he graduated from ministerial school, and he was extremely proud of graduating. And in amongst his photos, I found his little medallion and orange ribbon that the graduates wore at that ceremony. He still kept it. After the Navy, Robert fell in with a group of Mormons who were having a lot of fun, picnics and outdoors, and they had lots of activities. And so he began studying their books. And soon he was a practicing Mormon. And soon after that, he was even teaching classes, as you can imagine, and helping to build new churches and singing in their huge choir. Robert loved to sing, as many of you class students know, especially from SBR. He had perfect pitch, and he knew most of the crooning-type songs from the war years, and we often sang in the car together. And Andrea, Diane's daughter, learned to sing many of these long, long before she ever went to school. After this time in Arizona, he moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico to find work, and there met and married his first wife, Phyllis Comerford, on December 3rd, 1953. His family grew with children, Robert Wayne, who now lives in Bremerton, Diane, who lives here in Lacey, Donald, who normally lives in Chehalis, but now lives in North Dakota, and David, who lives in Federal Way. Robert's family moved many times as Robert took jobs here and there, leading to business management possibilities in retailing. Sometime in the 1960s, the family moved to the Tumwater, Olympia, Lacey area, where Robert worked for Sears Roebuck Company in various positions, working hard and rising higher. He joined various seekers and spiritual groups, and then someone persuaded him to come to the Unity Church, after he'd said he was never going to another church again in his life. Spirit always has funny twists and turns for us. And so it was with Robert. He came to the Unity Church once and stayed and helped to actually build this building and was on its first board of directors. In 1976, he got divorced and moved to Lee's Summit, Missouri to attend Unity classes and work in the International Phone Prayer Room and eventually attend a ministerial school. On July 22nd, 1977, he married a longtime friend, Marianne Arneson, me, who also began Unity classes and ministerial school. People say love conquers all. Well, yet Robert and I had many learning bumps along the way. We actually studied books and took seminars to have a happy marriage because we both knew so many things had been going wrong in our previous marriage and that we each needed to change and we needed to work together to make a happy marriage. So we really did work. And as a couple, we were solid in our spiritual goals and our purpose in life. However, there was still that figuring out how two very strong, independent people could coexist amiably in very busy lives. So we divided responsibilities by allowing each other to do what we had a talent for, what we liked to do, and what we could do best. We came to respect each other's abilities and support each other that way. He made the money, and I spent it. I said it was in the wedding contract in invisible ink. He didn't argue too much because he really didn't like to bother with the checkbook and finances, although he could do it in many organizations. He even served as treasurer for a time. He left it all to me, including investments. So I became administrator of his book business, the checkbook, our investments, while he traveled and taught more and more. We learned we did not need to squabble over how to use the toothpaste tube. Squeeze from the middle or only from the end, you know? To settle the difference, we each had to have our own toothpaste tube. However, when my tube was all squished in the middle, I would soon find that someone had pressed the tube forward, rolled up the bottom of the tube, and banded it together for me. I'd have to grin or occasionally tease him. I see you couldn't stand it anymore. His return remark would be, well, somebody has to take care of you. A reverse is that I often had to insist and peel off his favorite sweater in order to get it to the laundry. To his grumbling about my disturbing his work or his book, I would insist, I'm taking care of you. When Robert asked me to marry him, I gave him all the reasons he should reconsider. I cooked health food way back then very strictly. I like your cooking, he said. I'll learn to like new foods. I don't like to vacuum. I'll vacuum, he said. So who could resist such persistence and devotion? We respected each other and worked out our partnership even to making meals together. So we learned to work together and to work separately and allow the other person to work separately. We gave each other the right to be who we are and who we really are not. We learned some patience and insight by working to understanding ourselves and each other, and which was not always comfortable, because sometimes we had very different opinions on things. But we never argued. We would state our opinions and then agree we disagreed, and respect each other's views, and make it okay to hold different opinions, sometimes on important issues. This was the hardest lesson for both of us to learn. Our love was too important to be angry with each other, at least for long. Robert agreed he was opinionated and could be stubborn, yet also recognized I could out-stubborn him if it was really necessary. And it's interesting, students do not always understand our companionship or partnership in marriage. They couldn't understand why I just wasn't adoring him. I loved him. Did I have to also publicly adore him? I mean, I kind of drew the line there. And he understood that. The ladies loved him. And he loved it. But he was always faithful. So I let him. Robert was very supportive of all women because his mother had been poor and had to work very hard. He was disappointed when I did not continue to work SRT counseling. I did not like to do SRT, and people don't understand that. He soon came to see what I knew inside. My path was different, but it was very supportive of his work and of him in a different way. God had a better plan than my trying to be a second Robert. Impossible. This organization needed my insight and administrative skills to get started and growing. They didn't need a second Robert. And they don't need a second Robert now either, because all of you have learned and grown, and you are performing amazing things. Amazing things. Way back when Robert graduated from ministerial school, we accepted the position of co-ministers in Christ Church Unity in San Jose, California, and we were there for 10 years. This was a great learning and growing time for us. Robert loved to do classes in Bible interpretation, and I loved to do meditation classes and prayer classes and create workshops. And so again, we divided things. I was head administrator, which was strange to some people, and Robert was in charge of buildings and grounds. He loved to garden and tolerated my buying and watering plants, but never weeding. His weeding time was often very meditative for him. I also remember times at San Jose Unity Church when Robert would appear on his day off in his grubby pants and chop and hack at the bamboo that never stayed in its proper place in the churchyard. When Robert was busy doing this, everybody knew, you better leave him alone. He was working off excess energy on some issue or problem. In those years, Diane joined our family. And in recent years, he and I and Diane have been putting jigsaw puzzles together in the evenings. Mostly for relaxation, Robert and I read or watched every John Wayne movie many times. And all the Disney movies. They were our favorites too. You see, Robert was a romantic at heart, appearing tough sometimes on the outside, but really pretty soft inside. Neither Robert nor I socialized much. His classes and counseling needed the balance of quiet evenings at home and our personal weekends. And we prized our quiet, alone time together. Even if we were only in the same room reading different books, we were together and at peace. He easily accepted my daughters and granddaughters as his family, as well as I came to know his children, particularly in these last months. Since he was born on the 4th of July, we often held patio suppers here in Olympia so both our families could watch the beautiful fireworks over the lake where we live. And he often sang, "I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, born on the 4th of July." Since the first of this year, Robert and I worked with our children to prepare them. Robert and some of us knew since last July that Robert would be leaving soon. Over the last 3 months, we easily saw his energy withdraw. In January, he was shuffling down the hall, supporting himself along the wall. In February, he was in a wheelchair. In March, bedridden. Being bedridden was not easy for Robert. He was just waiting for his request for death with dignity to be approved so he could leave in his time and his way. Death with dignity is the Washington state legal permission for someone to exit their life if 2 physicians agree that the person is terminal. He had applied in early February. On April 2nd, his children, mine, and 6 of his grandchildren were with him to say our last goodbye and I love yous. He had asked Catherine Hamilton Cook to be with us. Harp music played. Flowers brightened the rooms. Candles were burning. And he told us all he had had a wonderful life and to go and to have many years of wonderful living. And then he went. His peaceful, loving leaving was a blessing for all of us there. Robert went as he wanted to go. The last 2 weeks, Robert often awakened at 3 p.m. and insisted about needing to go to meetings and get out of bed. And it took him a while to come back from where he had been in the spiritual realms, back to the physical realization that he could no longer walk, could not get out of bed, and there were no meetings to go to. In this life, he never, ever, ever, ever liked to go to meetings. Ever. And would get out of them at any provocation or excuse that he could. So for Robert to eagerly be wanting to get out of bed and get going out of the door to his meetings, he definitely was aware of the spiritual world. On other occasions, he said he was gathering flowers and birds or saw people at the end of his bed. So I know he is still busy learning and teaching and helping with the universe in some way. People have expressed to me, "I'm sorry for your loss." And that is very kind of them. Yet the response it triggers in me is, I don't feel like I've lost someone. I've had someone. And I'm very grateful for that. And it was such a good experience and such a great learning experience. It stretched me and it stretched him. No, I don't feel loss. I feel gain and thanksgiving and gratitude. So thank you, Robert, for being my love, my friend, my teacher, my support. I set you free as you always set me free. Robert, you are still the great, determined person you ever were. So go for it.
Thank you, Marianne. And thank you for reminding me of Robert's singing. I remember when when I took spiritual restructuring from him, and during the cranial sacral, which you have to hold for 4 minutes, he would sing High Hopes. Does anybody here remember that? So now I have that song, High Hopes, running through so I'm grinning. It's because I'm hearing oops, there goes another rubber tree plant. Several weeks ago, not long after Robert passed, I was driving by a church in my hometown of Redmond, and there on the church reader board was a message, "God is still speaking." And I thought, what a wonderful insight. My second thought was, if God is still speaking, it's probably because Robert is still asking questions somewhere. All joking aside, it is a journey to really contemplate what someone has really meant to you, especially someone that you've known so long, and I've known Robert almost half my life. Thank goodness. And it's also a Herculean task to even begin to understand the knowledge, wisdom, light, and understanding that Robert really brought to us, especially in the SRT community. By any measure, his accomplishments with Spirit and with the community are impressive. He created a complete spiritual research and healing system in SRT and SPR and completed 4 books and thousands of additional pages in articles and book drafts. And as his editor, I can tell you there's thousands of them. Someday I'll have my office completely cleaned out, but I'm still behind him, by the way. I think there's still editing for me sitting on my desk. Yeah. But it's a testament to the universal value of his work that most of Robert's work in SRT has been translated and taught in at least 10 languages by 100 certified teachers worldwide. There's 40 in the U.S. alone. And there's untold thousands of people that use SRT every day for personal healing and expansion. And this expansion continues today thanks to the nonprofit Spiritual Response Association that Robert founded with Marianne and with his daughter Diane in 1991, and with the many dedicated staff, volunteers, and SRT community members that continue its work. But I believe Robert's gifts to us are even more impactful than all of that. For me, he cannot simply be remembered as a writer and teacher or even as a founder. It's clear to me that the hallmark of his contribution is that of personal inspiration and encouragement in my relationship, and if I can say, many people's relationships with Spirit. When I met Robert in 1990, he had already moved here to Redmond, or I should say to Redmond. I'm still in denial that he moved out of my hometown. That's been 10 years ago now. No, maybe even longer. He had started working with SRT 4 years before in his Unity ministry in San Jose, California. Like so many others before me and so many other after, I came to know Robert through my desire to heal the suffering in my life. And we know how often 20-year-olds can suffer. They think it's the suffering to end all suffering. He gave an SRT talk and demonstration at my healing support group. I remember his kind, listening manner and the curious way he had of holding a conversation with God using a pendulum. I got over my skepticism, though, because the clearing he requested on my behalf had a dramatic and immediate effect. And this is a response I've seen 1,000 times over since with all of the people that do SRT work. I eagerly signed up for his classes, and here I am 23 years later trying to contemplate the blessings I've received just from knowing him. For many who have come in later years to Robert's work with Spirit, it may seem it all arrived seamlessly, all tied up in a neat package of books and charts. However, the creation of SRT followed Robert's personal healing path, sometimes difficulties marked with equal measure of joy and frustration, because Robert was more than a channel. And the creation of SRT was more than the simple recording, really, of a faithful servant, although Robert really dedicated his life to service. Not for Robert was the quiet, meditative state of receiving information. He was often proud to tell people, "I don't meditate." Yeah, Robert's brand of service was really the advocate for the human race. It's fair to say that the entire system of SRT is the result of Robert's and others' ongoing conversation with spiritual guidance about how to deal with suffering. I learned from Robert that a relationship with Spirit God was meant to be just that, a personal conversation, liberally spiced with questions and requests, and every once in a while, as we've learned from Robert, a few forceful demands. Yeah, You've been next to his office when he's having a discussion with the Spirit? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Robert was a study both in courage and surrendering to Spirit. The only reason we do not have more charts in the SRT system is because Robert finally realized there was not enough paper on the planet to record all the information he was getting. He was also too busy, frankly, teaching others to connect to Spirit and to ask questions for themselves. He was very dedicated to teaching people how to do this for themselves. For many years, he traveled tirelessly across the globe to teach SRT and SPR. In the early years of the SOA, I remember Robert traveling 2 weeks out of every month. So he was gone a lot. And while additional teachers were eventually trained and certified, it's Robert's personal commitment to teaching others how to do this that really created the grassroots. I think Robert can rest now, or whatever he's doing in the spiritual realms, knowing that this work continues. And why did Robert ask all these questions and teach so many? Because he really believed that we were divine spiritual beings and we had the power to create our own healing. I learned from Robert that we do not have to accept limitation and suffering, and that we can work from our own infinite potential. We do not simply pray from a place of helplessness, but we ask Spirit what is blocking us and request that healing directly. And most importantly, we can ask how we block our own healing and how we can open ourselves up to receive the healing that comes to us in such abundant measure. According to Robert's guidance, as divine spiritual beings, we must give up our negative belief systems, which he bluntly referred to as BS, in order to change our lives for the better. For Robert, this was changing your consciousness changes your life. Thank you, Robert, for challenging my notions of who I think I am and for seeing the potential in me and others. Robert knew how difficult it was to change this. It was not unusual for him to spend months, and I mean months, clearing hundreds of programs for himself every day in order to make progress on his own healing. And he was just as tenacious with his own clients and students. He never relied on simple theory or platitudes. Even if he had seen the same suffering in countless other people, he always asked the questions as if they were new for the first time for each and every client. He would say, is there something to clear or heal for this person? And Robert never took no for an answer. Never. When he was trying to find the root cause for suffering. It was really in this way that I think Robert was able to bring the work in and to stay aligned with the sacred in the person, in the personal moment. Thank you, Robert, for teaching me persistence and faith, because he showed this in great measure. And although many people sought to elevate Robert as a kind of guru, he would have none of it. In over 23 years, I never once saw him answer a spiritual question without checking with his guidance. For Robert, his most important role was facilitating the personal relationship between clients and students and their own guidance. He really considered himself a fellow traveler on the road, perhaps a bit further ahead than most of us. I couldn't even see him, frankly. He was so far down the road. But he was a traveler nonetheless. He would patiently answer question after question from his students, and he would just as often tell students, ask, you know the process, all you have to ask and do the work. And while this frustrated some people, Robert knew that lifelong healing for people was rooted in their own connection and their ability to get past their own limitations. Thank you, Robert, for teaching self-support and self-awareness. Thank you for teaching me to find the answer to my own prayers with Spirit. Robert did not believe in being approximate with his understanding. You know what I mean. He believed in being impeccable in everything that he asked about, even if it meant asking 100 more questions. It was never about finding some programs. Only the precise number would do, and only the precise number cleared would do. Yeah. This impeccability brought us a really good record of his teaching and his learning with Spirit, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you again, Robert, for teaching me impeccability. And as impatient as Robert could be with the detailed learning process, a learning process of his own, he was forever grateful for the healing and wisdom he received. In addition to seeking direct information from guidance, Robert was an avid scholar of the Scriptures. He was really fascinated by the consistent messages of healing that humanity has received over a millennium, and he had a keen desire to encourage students to do their own study. He didn't believe in dogma, but he really believed that people could learn from wherever they were at. He considered every situation and person a possible teacher. He did not reject ideas or thoughts out of hand if they did not match his own personal experience. He would always ask guidance. Well, maybe after a dozen questions, he would be satisfied with the response. Yeah, and Robert enjoyed the discoveries made from others learning SRT. SRT is really a community effort, and I think he would say that. Thank you, Robert, for teaching me that there is so much to be learned from life and those around us if we're simply open and are paying attention. Robert taught us through SRT that if we aren't getting the answer we seek, we're probably not asking the right question. And you know, Robert never did stop asking questions. 7 years ago, he asked Spirit how many questions he'd asked in his 20 years, and Spirit told him 2 million. I really think that's an underestimate. Yeah. And thank you, Robert, for teaching me the art of spiritual conversation and for teaching me to listen to guidance. I see the fruits of this loving labor in every student that I teach and in every client that receives a clearing. I've stopped counting the number of times people have told me that they benefited from his work because it would be like trying to count molecules in the air. It's just completely surrounds me. But most of all, I thank Robert for showing me the true nature of spiritual love and forgiveness. SRT at its heart is really about forgiving and releasing the fears and beliefs that keep us from knowing our relationship to divine love. Robert used to say many times, the only hell is the one between your ears. How much more suffering would I have had to go through if I did not long ago begin this process of changing my programs and beliefs? And thankfully, because of Robert, I don't need to know. Standing up today to celebrate Robert is just one more beginning. There will always be more to know about ourselves in spirit. From Robert, I learned the following. Ask. Be curious about who you are and where you're going. Be passionate about what you can accomplish in healing and in service. There will always be one more question to ask. Thank you, Robert, for your courage, your love, your wisdom, and your light. We know your work carries on wherever you are and in the hearts of all you touched. In the honor of Robert, to end this speech, I did a little research with High Self this morning. Okay. Number of years that Robert was here with us, 86. Number of programs I had to clear to write this remembrance, 465. Number of questions Robert asked in the pursuit of healing knowledge, 2,405,150. Number of people on the planet benefiting from SRT, 1,300,000 and climbing. There's a lot of people still doing this work. Number of souls cleared through SRT work, Spirit says is infinite. The value of Robert and all SRT work in the universe, infinite times infinite. Robert, thank you. From my heart to yours, I love you and I honor you.
I hope Robert's not resting, but helping us with the service today. Now we're going to hear A Moment in Time by Barbara Alexander, a student in the United Kingdom. What made us choose that moment when sperm and egg collide, each one seemingly random, which moment you decide? We travel down these corridors of time, each one unique and perfect expressions of divine. And what will be our purpose, what we've chosen to do, what learning lies before us? What if we consciously knew? In the depths of our being are seeds of the beyond. We each have a purpose. When fulfilled, we're gone. Never doubt the reason you chose your mom and dad. You did it for a reason, for that we must be glad. What was it that prompted that one moment in time? If I could choose again, what future would be mine? Now we're going to have an a cappella trio Sue O'Brien, Amy, and Kevin Robertson. We're going to have a brief meditation in loving memory. This is by Joseph F. Brenner. I am you, that part of you who is and knows, who knows all things, and always knew and always was. For I am your real teacher, the only real one you will ever know, and the only master. I, your divine self, I am not your human mind, nor its child, the intellect. They are but phases of human personality, as you are a phase of my divine impersonal. For your mind must henceforth be your servant, and your intellect your slave, if my word is to penetrate to your soul consciousness. Then my word will be to you a source of endless joy and blessing. Yes, I am. Come to you now. Be still. And know I am God. Then, when somewhat of their vital significance begins to dawn upon your consciousness, speak these my words slowly, imperatively, to every cell. Be still and know I am God. Thank you. Now I'm going to share with you a golden moment written by Yamini Bhatt, SRT teacher. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yamini Bhatt. Yamini Bhatt. On Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013, my beloved teacher, mentor, and spiritual guide made his transition. On that day at a specific time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, following yogic tradition, I was told by a senior Kundalini yoga teacher to do a very special meditation for 31 minutes. This was to support and honor Robert's journey into light realm. So with my heavy but grateful heart, I prepared myself to do the meditation that was given to me. This meditation required that I sit on the floor cross-legged and use a special mantra, a sound current, and a mudra, a hand position. Having no expectations, I lit a candle on my altar, centered myself, tuned in, and began my 31-minute meditation. As I recited the mantra out loud, at first I began to feel a certain level of restlessness and heaviness around my heart. I stayed focused on my breath, centered in my heart, and kept on vibrating the mantra. After about 10 minutes of meditating this way, I felt relaxed and started to feel enormous strength within and deep sense of connection with my own presence. Then suddenly I felt a release from my heart. My consciousness was lifted out of me, and I saw myself walking with Robert. The space around us, all 360 degrees, was lit up like a ball of golden light. There was no end to this light, as I couldn't see the edge of it. I was very present with my breathing and chanting as I continued to walk in this incredible golden space. Suddenly, I could go no further, as if some invisible force was holding me back, yet Robert kept walking without ever looking back. For a few seconds, I stood watching him. Then he disappeared in what seemed to be an endless path of golden light. As I kept chanting, I became more aware of my physical body, my breath, and my own sound vibration. Just then, the meditation ended. 31 minutes were complete. With an incredible sense of deep peace and gratitude, I said my final goodbye to Robert as I sat there for a while, letting myself just be with the experience. This profound event continues to fill my being with knowing that all is well, even though, at a human level, I so miss Robert's presence in my life. I know his spiritual teachings through SRT will live on. I know he is forever present, supporting and guiding me with my SRT work. Okay. At this time, we're going to exchange some remembrances from SRT community members, and Catherine and I will share that.
Is this on?
Oh, good.
Don't want to get too close to
Some of these are small. Are we in a good spot?
Yes.
Okay. Good light. I think. Do you want to see her the piano? Yeah. Hear the piano. This one is from Linda Turner of the United Kingdom and president of the SRA. My life and the lives of thousands of others have been enriched because of the knowledge Robert brought to us from Spirit. It has been a joy to share in his journey and a true privilege to continue his work.
Love knows no bounds, and the love we all feel for him will continue to flow forevermore. May his return to Spirit be filled with further enlightenment and blessings.
Another speaker from Hungary. Let's celebrate Robert's passing, knowing he is at a good place now. This is what he wanted and went with peace and joy to maybe create new universes. His nice wish to all, he said he had a good life, and his wish to everyone was to live a good life. Thank you, Robert, for all you have done for us with your wisdom and work. Go to where you would like to go and create more with your wisdom. Much love to you, anywhere you are in the light. Erica Laszlo, Vice President.
And this is from Lisa Koo of Trinidad, West Indies, who is now current president. Thank you, Robert, for being brave enough to try something new and to ask questions, and for the love behind the work, and mostly for all that you shared with us all over the world. We love you and thank you for the gift of SRT.
This is written by Veronica Bao, board member from Colombia, South America. Robert is and will be for me the perfect example of a focused heart. He trusted his intuition and his connection with Spirit to develop a tool as beautiful, loving, simple, and powerful as SRT. He showed us how to remember our divine origin, and thus our potential can reach infinite horizons.
And this one, I believe, is from Jamie Tanna. Robert has been a source of inspiration in the relatively short time that I've known him. He has never been too busy to help and has provided me, among so many others, with a shining example of the service and the light. I particularly remember a time when I was undertaking a very intense yoga teacher training program and it triggered a severe skin allergy. I emailed Robert for help and he cleared a past life program, among other things. The very next day, it was 50% gone and then continued to subside over the next couple of weeks. I was so grateful for his immediate and kind assistance, and I shall miss him.
This is from Alice Fain, board member from Hong Kong. Getting to know Robert has been a life-changing blessing for me. He has such an easygoing and down-to-earth personality. No matter how tired he might be, he is always willing to help, and he is extremely generous in giving. I first met Robert in 2008 in a class in Olympia. One day, while we were having lunch at his favorite lunch spot, Taco Bell, I casually asked him if he had ever thought of going to teach in Asia. He simply said, "Okay, I'll go then." It was such an unexpected answer to me, and I couldn't believe my luck. Later that year, Robert did visit Hong Kong to teach SRT, and a very large group of students from all over Asia attended his classes. He had planted the seed of SRT in Asia, and it flourished. Now SRT is considered one of the most important alternative healing tools in Asia. And the SRT community is getting ever bigger and stronger. Robert's teaching and legend will live on, and he will be missed by all of us.
This is from Sherlyn Wright of Chicago and a board member. In April 2001, I walked into the first evening of Robert's basic class, not consciously knowing that I was about to begin a journey that would completely transform my life. I sat down at the table and for some reason was a bit upset with Robert without even having spoken with him. Maybe on some level I knew my plan was about to be destroyed. No more pursuit of Wall Street career. Whatever the reasons for my irritation were at the time, I sat down with resistance and a little scowl. When I asked to see if our pendulums would move, I gave him an accusatory look and said, "Mine doesn't work." He just looked at me and said, "Okay, there's something to clear." Well, that was my introduction to Robert. After that class, he remained my teacher, became a confidant when things got a little tough, is my inspiration and role model. I learned so much from him and will continue to do so as I continue to learn how to fully embrace Spirit as who I am and as he has so beautifully done. Thank you for being you, Robert.
This is from Mary Marie Satterley, who was Robert's mentor in the early development years. She was one of his first students and the first public SRT consultant. Robert had the gift of sensing a person's strengths and weaknesses. He also had the ability to help you build on your strengths and overcome your weakness. Robert loved to teach and has taught thousands of students around the world. To some, he was their guru, but this was not his interest. He founded SRT and has been its leader up to the day he left. His legacy is for those who follow after him to keep this light shining. Now we're going to see a short video clip of Robert.